My name is Kevin Moriarty. I'm the executive in charge of production for The Rachel Ray Show, in whose audience holding room you are. So on behalf of The Rachel Show and the All Mobile Video Studios, welcome. I understand there are a lot of students as well as working professionals in the audience. So I'd like to get an idea, because I'm going to be asking show of hands on a number of topics through the evening. How many are actually currently working professionals? Okay, great. That's a good bunch of people. And then how many are students? Good. Good. Okay, a good mix. So let me first introduce the panel, which I think these are great people representing a cross section of the business in film and in television here. First is Jacob Charney. He's manager of television production for NBC Universal. And in that position, he is responsible for a lot of the network production that's done by Universal, including NBC, Sci-Fi Channel, USA, GE, what was the other service? GEP Productions.
Safety, one way or another, covers it.
So
we have offices in LA and New York.
And safety and occupational health in the workplace is under his brief for anything NBC on the East Coast. Gayan Haskins is a New York-based location manager for films, TV commercials, checking out and scouting locations in advance and raising a lot of issues that specific locations may find. Scott Merkin is an executive producer of large-scale live events, such as the VH1 Philly 4th of July Jam for 3 years, 2012, 13, and next week, in Philly.
Yes.
He's the man. Including 3 years of Jay-Z's Budweiser Made in America Music Festival, and CBS A New York Christmas, and Jay-Z Live in Brooklyn. Joe Reedy is a film first assistant director on a couple of small movies called, among others, White House Down, Black Swan, Shutter Island, The Aviator, Gangs of New York. I guess you got a biz. Okay.
You can go further back, but it'll show how old I am. So.
And Leslie Pavia is the director of production for Steve and David Entertainment, who just finished or just aired the show on History Channel, The World Wars, which was shot mostly, I found out, in West Virginia. And Leslie's previous experience includes not only scripted production, but news and sports. And I hope to get your perspective on a lot of those different types of production during the course of the evening. Now, what is precipitating this discussion at this time is an event you probably are all aware of back in February down in Georgia on the set of a movie called Midnight Rider. An accident took place that claimed the life of one of the camera crew, Sarah Jones, and injured seriously several other people. This is probably the most visible and serious accident in the business in close to 20 years. In my memory, the most serious prior to this was an accident on the set of the movie The Twilight Zone, which killed the actor Vic Morrow as well as 2 child actors. I don't want to specifically get into the circumstances or talk too much about the Midnight Rider incident. A lot of that is in litigation, and all the facts are not in yet. But what I think we can say is that what happened on the set of The Midnight Rider happened in part due to failure to observe proper safety procedures, and failures to seek permissions from all local agencies and government representatives. What I want to discuss tonight and stress is that even when professionals such as everyone on this panel and all of you in this room, even when professionals who are well-trained and very conscious of things plan prepare, rig properly, accidents can still happen. Safety is, production is not an inherently dangerous business, but there is a lot, and there are frequent occasions where things can be very hazardous, and that's when when things go well. And even just 2 weeks ago in Las Vegas, an audiovisual technician working for the MGM Grand Hotel was killed when unloading some audio equipment from an electric cart. The cart slipped into reverse and pushed him out of a plate glass window 3 flights up. Even normal things can kill you. What we're going to be discussing tonight is not meant as what the Producers Guild recommends for you. This is not an instructional seminar. This is a conversation about where we hope that a lot of individual experiences and expertise can be discussed about a range of different projects and situations that may be helpful to you in the future. So without judging the outcome of the Midnight Rider investigation, our seats of the pants, guerrilla-style productions with no advance permitting or permissions and minimal attention paid to some matters of safety, are they on the rise? And I'll ask that first to Jacob, who has a pretty broad portfolio of several different projects.
I started out working in independent film, and now being with NBC and being on a corporate side, I have to say that what I've seen locally and in places like Puerto Rico, places outside of what used to be the Film Center of Los Angeles, now for 10 years, is a lot of individuals who might not have what we consider proper training to be doing roles, key grip or electric, just the experience to know how to run a set safely. There's a lot of language that we use in our industry that can't really be taught in school. It has to be taught practically. I don't know how that lends itself, but you see a lot of it on a day-to-day on set.
So let me throw a follow-up question to everyone else on the panel. Because of the lack of experience of a lot of crew members that Jacob was referring to, is there enough time on a set for you individually or your department heads or the more senior members of your crew to teach and train folks, or are you just trying to get things done? Joe?
May I say, I don't think there's enough time to train people when they're meant to be doing their job. And who's doing the training in that case? It would be the key people, the department heads. If they're experienced, maybe along the way they'll give tips to people, but it's not like a formal way of training someone and giving them all of that. Now in New York City and in the East Coast, I would say that with the busy work environment of New York, specifically in union crews, that it's gotten a little thin in terms of the most experienced people, and we are having people work on union productions who don't have very much experience. On the flip side, in California, in Southern California, which has got a little less work at the moment compared to New York or Louisiana, they have a safety passport program, and all of the technicians and now DGA members, assistant directors, have to pass through a training program. And anyone who's a grip, an electrician, anybody operating a lift, a crane, a driver, has to have further instruction beyond the basic safety training to do their particular job, to operate specific equipment. So that kind of thing at least has made that group of people who are union people on their roster very experienced in safety, because they have to have safety
The
training.
safety passport you're talking about, who certifies that, or who?
It's I got mine in my pocket. I brought it with me. Contract Services Administration Trust Fund. There's an acronym for that somewhere.
Yes.
And it looks like a passport. And inside, I've got my picture and nothing else really. But if someone wanted to check it, let's say you wanted to check it, because Joe, you're running this set, you're running my set, do you have a passport? And they wouldn't ask here in New York, but in Southern California, I would have to have this. So I'd show that to him.
Yeah, this is something that we're trying to implement now, and I know that with the Directors Guild, producers are going to be responsible for taking courses that we're bringing to the East Coast as well as Louisiana. It's a great program. I had to do it when I used to do locations back in LA, and it's a paid program. So when you're grip or electric or anybody has to go, it's not just something that they have to do their free time. It's something that's paid through the union, so that everybody gets proper training, safety training.
It's something I'd like to see more of, that kind of training, though, given, because it's really, for the DGA people, it's just so you could work in Southern California. But our technicians here, unless they're going to work in Southern California, don't have to take that stuff. They may get certified on particular equipment because of the Department of Buildings, or someone requires them to know something here in New York City, but otherwise they don't have to have that. But I would put it this way: union crews tend to get some safety training in an informal way as they grow into their job, and they get it bit by bit. And it becomes, in the whole safety conversation, a lot of it becomes an individual having to say, I can do this, I can't do this. You can't do that, as an example, to speak up about it, which I know we'll talk about in this.
So you've talked about this in the context of Southern California and New York, typically centers of production.
As you're talking
and
about the
Louisiana.
spread of work, this passport training is only given for Southern California people.
Okay.
It might be offered soon in Louisiana to DGA people, but that's so they can work in Southern California. They won't be required to know that to work in.
Let me pick up on that, though.
Louisiana.
Over the last 10 years or so, production has spread like wildfire, largely due to the tax and film incentives that a lot of, I think something like 43 states now have in place. So there are more people working in more states than ever. Leslie, you were telling me just earlier that the World Wars was shot largely in West Virginia. The requirements for a lot of these tax programs require you to use a lot of local labor. Do you find that purely local crews are as experienced prior to their projects as New York or LA?
No. In some cases, you're going to find people that are experienced. Right now, we're shooting something in Utah, and we had to push the shoot 3 weeks to wait for the crew because the decent crew was shooting another project. So we try and wait for that. You always can't. A friend of mine was just shooting an independent film up in northern New York. They had inexperienced PAs. They didn't care. They wanted them. The AD had a rough time with the producers. They wanted cheap. Well, the guy, 1 or 2 different PAs on different nights, took a 24 truck and tried to go through the drive-through at McDonald's and Burger King, and so that savings cost them a lot of money and a few injuries and damage to the cars behind as they took out the drive-through. So I mean, those things happen, and that just happened 3 weeks ago to a friend of mine, actually, in probably 2 hours outside the city. You know, that's recent things. They're not trained. A lot of productions, it's like, who can we hire? Who can we get cheap? Let's go. Let's just do it. We've got to go on the fly.
Gayan, what's been your experience? I mean, as a location manager and location scout, hopefully you try to anticipate a lot of possible questions that will be coming up at the location and smooth the way for the production unit to come through by meeting with local property owners, agencies, film commissions. How many problems that are on film sets are due to some units walking into a location for the very first time when they're shooting?
Most of the jobs that I work on, that doesn't happen because you know where you're going, you get everybody there, everything's organized, and so you typically don't do that. If you get the let's put it across the street version of that, where you want to put the camera in the middle of the traffic lane 50 yards away because suddenly that's the best shot. That's typically the kind of thing I deal with, where you expand out of your perimeter, and they're just kind of making it up as they go, which is fine, but you don't have a way to deal with that, and maybe you don't have police or something with you to do that. So that's typically nerve-wracking for production. for locations, excuse me.
And Scott, in a lot of your shows, obviously, everything has to be buttoned up months and weeks and months in advance. And tell me about the experience that you have with local folks.
So on these live, large events that might have, tens of thousands of people in the audience, or next week's show has almost 1 million people in the live audience. So you're right. I mean, it's a year-round public safety planning exercise that involves police, FBI, all sorts of folks, evacuation plans, things you have to plan for things that you hope never happen. And then, of course, we have to plan for things that we know will happen. Building a stage structure so you have high wind action plans, and what to do if the wind's 20 miles an hour, what to do if there's lightning 8 miles away or less, and who's watching the lightning, and all of those things. And on top of that, of course, all the talent, and they have all the bonbons they want in their dressing rooms and everything else that we all have to deal with. So very much like a location, that perimeter is established. There's a lot of walkthroughs, a lot of table exercises, a lot of plans, a ton of drawings up in the office, and people meeting around these drawings all the time. We take a look at these kinds of live events. Very much we use the same planning strategy that pilots use in terms of the flight plan. It may be something that you do every single day, but when a commercial airline pilot gets into an airplane, or two of them, right, because there's a redundancy, get into an airplane, they have a book, and they turn the pages of the book, and they go, okay, we're going to turn the engines on. Okay, we're going to do this. Things they do every day, but there's a checklist, because usually what happens when people make mistakes, humans make mistakes every single day, is because they forgot something that they thought that they had done. So it's all about checklists and keeping an eye on it. And the other thing is, empowering folks to make the right decisions, and that's in a sense, service of the team. If you have a team of folks running around afraid of the executive producer or afraid of a line producer, that, well, I don't want to tell this person that we better spend more time tightening this because they're going to yell at me because they're going to go into overtime, then they're not going to say it. They're going to suppress it, and that's when things happen. So we have to empower. We have hundreds of people on these shows. They have to be empowered to be able to say that I think something is wrong. And at the end of the day, I do believe that ultimately it's the executive producer's job to make sure that the crew is safe and that the audience is safe.
Actually, that segues now to I want to get an idea from
Chair.
from all of
Hopefully
you.
Fire that chair.
This is the funniest thing. That chair's unsafe, so you might be right.
There you go. I'd like to get an idea on how many of you have been on sets, either on location or in a studio, where you have felt, no, keep your hands up, keep the hands up, where you may have either seen something or felt something and felt uncomfortable about the safety of a situation. I'm going to raise them up. How many, either directly or anonymously, reported that? Okay. Good. Reported them to either the UPM on the set or your department head, or to reported them upward the chain of command to some extent. How many of you been on a set where there was an accident that required any medical attention? Okay, that's more common than we think. How many know for a fact that on any given shoot, what kind of a first aid, that you have a first aid kit or someone has first aid kit on the set? Fewer, it seems to me. How many of you know what's in those kits? Okay, I'm pretty impressed. Any of you certified in first aid or CPR? Okay. So I think it looks to me that we have a pretty good skill set. And does that kind of response among people in an audience strike you as something unusual, or do you find that as something that you sort of expect on the film set?
Well,
I mean, often you will hire a specific medic or a fire marshal, but for members just generally of a crew, how often do you expect people to have that kind of CPR or first aid training?
I, just from a locations point of view, it seems that this is all compartmentalized knowledge. Like when you mentioned about the first aid kit, I know it's on a truck somewhere, but I never have seen it. And if no one gets hurt, it stays buried on the truck. And so it becomes the person who packed the truck knows where it is. Now, not when you have a medic, that's different, but if it's just part of the production backup. So it's not widely known,
Okay.
you know, that that's available on set.
Okay. Let me ask then, Joe, as a first AD on the set, you're pretty much in charge of day-to-day or minute-to-minute operations, pretty much.
Yes, in terms of the first aid kit, on a bigger film, there'll be a nurse or a medic. Maybe an ambulance is standing by, depending on what the events are. But sometimes there'll be a production that we won't have that. So there's no room in the budget to have a nurse or medic. It's not required, at least here. But there is a first aid kit. Who is in charge of that? That's always an issue. You know, you're bringing up something that maybe we haven't had somebody in charge of it. A production person, a PA, a second AD, someone to know where it is. And sometimes when I'm doing television commercials, there is that thing on the truck. I'm glad nobody ever got hurt because I don't know what we would have done. Honestly, there wasn't that thought out. And so you've just caught me on something that next time I do it, I'm going to make sure that it's taken out of the truck and put on the set near the camera somewhere.
And also to know what's in it. I mean, on a past project of mine that'll go unnamed at this point, there was occasion where, you know, somebody, you know, gashed their arm open and we needed attention. We knew that we had a first aid kit, but hadn't really taken a very recent close look to it because when we opened it up, there was, you know, a small number of dressings, no antiseptic, no adhesive tape.
But even then, that's all
Yeah.
you're going to expect out of a first aid kit
Yeah.
on a small production. So
Right.
if you're expecting to have people in danger or anything, you know, if we could spring for the nurse, it would be good,
Yeah.
or medic.
Okay. Or at the very least, how many in this room have, as part of their daily responsibilities, the daily call sheet? All right. Keep those hands up. How many on a regular basis include information about the nearest hospital or medical facility or emergency facility? Okay. So that's a pretty standard. Pardon? When you have a printing emergency. So. Okay. So that's pretty standard then. How often have you been in situations where you've had to rush people off to one of the nearby emergency rooms? During the World Wars, how many casualties?
We only had one, and that was a gun accidentally went off, and the person was standing too close, and it was a hearing issue. He's absolutely fine. We took him to the ER, and he was released a couple hours later. He couldn't hear for about 3 days. So we got very lucky, and thank goodness for VFX.
Joe?
Depending on the production, that can happen pretty often on some of the things I've done where we have to take people to the hospital. So it can happen. Can I just mention that there's two different kinds of things that happen on sets. There's the everyday working on a set, on a film or television set. It's just normal business. You're not doing anything special, and that's people can hurt themselves without a stunt or special effects or any kind of unusual things happening, bad weather or anything. People just fall. They trip, fall, they fall off a ladder, they stand the wrong way in an apple box. So twisting an ankle or breaking a bone like a wrist or a hand, that can happen pretty easily with all the precautions and everything taken just in the kind of work we do because we're in heavy industry with electricity and heavy objects that we're carrying and moving parts, including moving vehicles coming to and from work. So it could happen without even doing anything special. So a trip to the hospital might sound like a terrible thing, but it can happen on a student film, very easily, so anytime.
Well, you also, too, talking about apple boxes, heavy rain, somebody usually goes down. It always happens. I've had, I think, more injuries that way with going to the hospital and heat stroke, somebody having a mild heart attack.
And,
The amount of injuries that we see from people rushing to either get up to the makeup trailer or down from it, or the wardrobe or the camera truck, is incredible.
More accidents happen not in front of camera, behind him. Matter of fact, in California, the #1 accident is key grip, cutting his hand, cutting a bagel.
He was saying the #1 accident in California was a key grip cutting their hand, cutting a bagel at craft service or at breakfast.
Accidents happen in front of the camera.
Very few accidents happen in front of the camera.
they happen in setups or teardowns often. And
Just the part about people rushing around on set. That I've seen a PA hit by a car with detectives were driving it, filming it at a courthouse, because he rushed in front of a car and they were rushing up to slam on the brakes, and it all happened at the same second. So, it was cops hitting a film crew. You can't predict it. But it was just because two people were late and they had nothing to do with each other, in that moment.
let me ask about the situations. First, let me ask Scott, with your experience. I mean, apart from staff, crew, talent, you have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people in an audience to worry with. How often have you experienced, or do you experience directly, problems of that with heat stroke or other audience-related problems?
Yeah, so there are two types for audience. There are two types of medical situations as they're classified. There's something called a contact, and then there's something called a transport, right? So if people are out there at a concert, jumping up and down, having a good time, and they don't drink enough water, they might get dizzy and pass out or almost pass out, and then they go to the medical tent, and that's considered a contact. If they're underage and they appear to be intoxicated, they usually get taken to the hospital, which becomes a transport. So it's a good record if you have 50,000 people to have 50 transports. All very minor, never admitted. So those things happen on a semi-regular basis on the large music festivals that we do. In terms of any serious accidents, very, very few, which is really a testament to not just the planning, but the folks that are, the professional police, fire, EMS people, and the public information about where people can get water and all of those things. One story that we had actually on the CBS Christmas Eve special, which we shot at St. Paul's here in Columbus Circle, so there's about 1,000 people in the audience. Live to tape, but it was pretty much live, so we really couldn't stop down. We had a medical situation in the audience. We had standby ALS, EMTs, and if you watch the show, you can almost see the person being taken out, and it was turned out to just be maybe like a diabetic blood sugar thing, so they were just disoriented, and they were transported just to be checked out. So part of it is, and that's a small example, but in the larger examples, where there's larger audiences, if you have a situation like that, you also have to keep. I mean, it's one thing to keep the cameras rolling and keep things on budget, but it's another thing not to incite fear or panic in a very large audience. So, you want to try to make things happen, and it's very important, to your point, about keeping the crew and the folks that might be addressing that very, very calm, so that you don't see a bunch of screaming people running around not knowing what to do. Keep them very calm. And that's why often you'll see EMTs, they don't run to a scene ever. And I've seen people go like, I can't believe they're not running. And statistically, it takes less time to walk carefully, briskly, to go and take care of somebody than it does to run and trip and fall. So staying calm and getting them out of there is the most important thing, I think.
Joe, you look like you were ready to add on to something.
I was just thinking it was a good story, really illustrating something. And when you were talking about calmness, part of it is, and you do this because you brief everybody at the beginning, is having a briefing about the day's work. First of all, especially addressed to the students there, you have to have a plan, whatever you're doing, what you're shooting, what you're doing, and you have to have a plan creatively. And then that will speak to the safety needs, among other things, which actually come out of the production needs. So a plan of a day, how you're going to approach your day's work on a, let's say, a narrative feature film or short film, student film, or television show. You have a plan for the day. Then you have a production plan. You're going to go from here to here. You're going to work. You're going to light this room. You're going to move over there. And everyone should know where they're going. So all that information, all very clear. That's why working together with locations, we often, we all have a plan together in a team with the production manager, locations, assistant directors. And then when you get to a new location, a safety briefing is part of it. Usually we're supposed to have a safety briefing every morning, but it's really more important to do it when you're in a new place. And it could happen 2-3 times in a day, or when you're doing something out of the ordinary. You have a car moving through a scene. You have an actor on a ladder, but you have to have a briefing and discuss this with everybody before you do anything. And if it's about where's the nurse, where's all the Band-Aids you were saying, the first aid kit, where all that stuff is, everyone should know all that. So it's a part of like standard operation.
In safety, as being a safety officer, we rely heavily on the first AD, on locations, on executive producers, to first have visibility so people know where they can hydrate, where first aid is if that's the medic. And safety meetings, and one thing that we tell our producers and ADs is be specific about your safety meeting. I don't want to see on a call sheet or a production report that you had a safety meeting and blah, blah, blah. It's a car moving through a scene. Be specific, because most people, they'll listen to specific things, safety concerns, but that's very important what you brought up.
Yeah, so the one thing is among professionals who might get safety briefings and training and all that stuff, there's a certain amount of fatigue hearing certain things about safety. So the main thing is to do it before you're going to do something so that people know. I mean, it's just really repeating again and again what we're doing and how we're going to approach it, and also having a plan of action. And you always have your plans of action, like where the evacuation route is. Like in a room like this, we're doing a scene of a panel with a bunch of people. There's got to be a fire exit. Is it going to be blocked by equipment? Do you have all your lights and everything hanging out right there in the only door? Or has someone looked ahead to make sure it's all clear? So especially for students, learning all those good habits, it makes sense to do that.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about when the plans. I mean, it's the time of day when we have the schedule. You have the schedule. You're 2 hours behind or 4 pages behind, and everyone is trying to rush things up. Tell me about situations that you may have seen where you're seeing things that are happening in an attempt to rush things along and catch up with schedule. Things are being done less than you would like. Tell me about your responses then. When do you intervene and say, if we're not going to be doing it safe, we're not going to do it?
Well, certainly, you spoke earlier about younger, more inexperienced crews, and I've noticed that sometimes, especially if you're getting late, so to speak, or you're behind in a schedule, that inexperienced crews tend to just act a little bit more in their own world, like the 2 people doing that job, and they don't necessarily know about the bigger picture. So things start to happen that are kind of wrong here and kind of wrong there. So if you're me, the location guy on a thing, you're walking around telling people, suggesting that they should move that and that please don't put that there. And, that kind of thing. You go around policing the set, which a little bit like cop, and you try not to, because you don't want the AD and the principal filming to be slowed down, but you also got to keep an eye on things.
Okay.
So maybe I'll use a cliche, if I get it right, where your lack of planning does not constitute an emergency on my part. And so when we do budgets, we try to plan and we try to put contingencies in. But typically, if you were to go and pull apart a situation where somebody was rushing around because they were late, something didn't happen, you can go back and see why that didn't occur, whether somebody didn't pack a truck properly, human error most of the time, some kind of planning error got you 3 hours behind. in my belief, it's the producer's job to make the decision and say, okay, we're going to spend the money to do it right, or we're not going to do it at all, because if we're going to risk somebody's life or risk safety, pay now or pay later, because then you could really wind up with some really horrible circumstances if you don't take a step back and tap into your contingency and do it right the first time.
Well, I know in the past I've taken a thing and I've spoken to the AD and the producer and say, what can we move? Can we move this to tomorrow? Do we have the right actors here? What can we shoot tonight? And you can avoid it so that you can properly set up. It's not worth the accident. It's not worth a lot of things. People are thinking they want overtime, but after a 12-hour day, who really wants overtime? And so we just try and move it around and plan. And you have contingencies. Sometimes maybe it's bringing in a different actor in for an extra day. And it's worth the safety.
Okay,
If I could say that when you're behind and you're rushing and you're fighting the light and all that, I know we're going to take all the precautions on everything, but there will still be that anxiety on parts of people and the edge and all that. And so you were saying about keeping things calm, and that's really, really important and really good to do, and to try to set that tone, because you never know who is going to be the person that's prodding everyone. And it could be your creative leader. It could be the director saying, we've got to do this, and just cracking the whip on everybody. And it's very, very hard politically when among professionals here, and certainly among students, the same thing. You're going to be desperate for this, and there's going to be someone that can't be stopped in a way. So it's how do you stop that, or how do you slow it down? Because it's all political. People are worried about their jobs. People are worried about their, whether they're going to fall out of favor with someone. And I'm not saying it's just the director. It could be anybody. It could be the cinematographer pushing his electrical crew. It could be an actor saying, you got to finish me in the next 20 minutes. I got to get out of here. It could be anything. So you have to measure the needs to get the work done and get it done without hurting anybody and go quickly. But those steps can only be really measured when you're there. And it takes quality leadership, possibly, on the part of certain people to set the tone. And no matter what is going on among how experienced the crew is, it's got to be laid out. Guys, girls, guys, we're in a hurry. We've got an hour to get this done. We've got 5 shots to do, and this is the order. And lay it out and say, if you guys have any problems, you come to see me, the AD or the executive producer, and say, we can't do this, we can't achieve this now. So you don't get pushed into that. But it's very, very hard in certain situations politically, as we've seen historically happen now in tragedies. Mm-hmm. And at that point, someone just has to say, we're not doing it. And that's happened to me, where people say, we're not doing it. We're done. This is over. We're not doing that shot. So, and that's the way to do it. So,
okay. Let me, apart from like the purely logistical issues of concern, such as something that might not be rigged properly, let's talk about some of the other more like human aspects of that might impair safety. For instance, if in the latter part of an afternoon you either see directly or someone reports to you about a crew member who either is under the influence or extremely fatigued and who just might be a danger to himself and his colleagues. Has that happened to you? Is it a different situation if the person is a makeup artist as opposed to a gaffer? Again, where do you intervene?
It recently happened to me, and you have to intervene immediately. That's not something that you wait 5 minutes or 10 minutes. You cannot show up on set. You cannot be drunk. You cannot be high. It doesn't work. Not only you're putting yourself in danger, you're putting others in danger. You make
Is this something
everybody
that
uncomfortable.
Is this something you notice yourself, or did other colleagues on the crew bring it to your attention?
Somebody, actually one of the PAs brought it to my attention. There was actually a cast member. It was a nighttime shoot. Person had gone out to dinner, consumed a little bit too much wine. We replaced this actor. I immediately went over. I had witnesses with me. I got a senior person to take him back. I didn't want to leave him with any PAs or put in any situation. It's also happened when people go out to dinner, they come back. Sometimes crew members have come back. You can't bring that person back. I mean, I'm sorry. It's not worth, is it really worth your job, that glass of wine or beer?
Okay. What time is it now, Patrick? We're moving along. We'll be opening the floor to questions in a couple of moments. Great. But I want to ask one or two more questions. We've talked a lot, mostly it seems in the context of big scripted projects or big live projects. Is there a difference between, is there a difference among genres of production? Are scripted projects, by virtue of the fact that there are more people involved, everything has to be much more planned? Is there a difference in a conscientiousness between reality shoots or smaller production shoots? Leslie, you've been involved, in addition to scripted shows, you've been in news and in sports.
And reality.
And reality. And Jacob, you oversee several different types of shows. Is there a difference between genres of production?
Not really. I think it's the leadership that's brought to that production, whether it's big or small. It's, the matter of safety is a matter of the people concerned producing the show.
I don't completely agree with that, because when you're in news and you're in a war zone and you're being shot at, there is a big difference. I worked with Bob Woodruff. I don't know if you remember that, when he was injured in Iraq by an IED. There was also, even when I was covering Katrina, we had somebody called Pilgrims with us, and we had to wear complete flak jackets, helmets. We were being shot at. I mean, these people didn't know that we were news crews. They were shooting at us, trying to protect their homes because they lost everything.
Yeah, war
So, yeah,
zones
it
are
is-
certainly, and natural disasters are not
natural
something
disasters. And we do, when I was with ABC News, we did hire personal security, and they were a lot of times, they were ex-Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Rangers, and things like that, and they would protect us. And you do have a lot of people you need to protect.
And one final question before I open up to the floor. How closely do you work with a risk management department, either a corporate one, such as I'm sure NBC has their own in-house risk management folks, to try to mitigate or pre-plan to reduce any risk, or for independent productions, your insurance companies? How much are they part of the process? Do they improve the process, or are they a hindrance? Anybody want to pick
Well,
up
I
on
know
that?
when I was with Disney, we had to every year be certified in OSHA, so you had to take classes. There was a lot of different things. Then when I left the networks and went independent, there was nothing. And in some cases, you do find the insurance companies, they want to know a little bit more. But as soon as you send them what this is, what that is, okay, write us a check for that, and it's finished. I'm not sure about the larger productions like you.
Well, as I was saying earlier, that not everybody has had training. In general, it's not required, except in Southern California right now. The risk management covers different things, right? That's a broad subject. So, like, as you're going into the thick of a war zone, if a company is going to spend money and do a theatrical feature in a place that's risky, they'd engage an outside agency to evaluate security risks. Let's say, I don't know the names of these companies offhand, but if you're going to shoot in the Middle East, let's say which country, and they'll say these are the possible risks you're going to face, your particular production. Or it doesn't have to be the Middle East, it could be some other part of the world. And certainly there's the disease factor and whatnot, depending on where you're going, if you're shooting out of the country. Even in the United States, there's, risk assessment has to be done, depending on where you're going.
We had a television program that went into an old granary in Red Hook, and NBC sends a safety officer with all tech scouts, if we can. We try to always be there. I went into this place, and there was a steel structure inside of the granary that was falling down, and it was a very dangerous situation. We let the tech scout talk and get him out of there, and then I went to the location manager and the producer, and I said, look, in all good conscience, we we can't film here until an engineer has seen it. I'm not a structural engineer. I haven't been trained in that, but I have been trained enough to know to look for safety concerns. And we did. We brought an engineer in. The owner of the place fixed it up. Everything was fine. But it's important to have eyes out. If that's risk management, whatever you want to call it, we call it safety officers.
Well, so Jacob, so you noticed that, but you were on a tech scout with probably 35 other people. Why did no one else?
Oh, they noticed. They were going to put up 4x4s. There were production was trying to implement safety, but all it would have done was put splinters through you as well as these iron grates. And it wasn't a matter of if, it was when. This thing was rusting out.
Just real quick, we have a peer review program in the live events production side on structures, where an independent engineer that's not part of the chain, they're paid independently to do structural studies after we've done our own, and that's part of the. We've been doing that all along, but that's I think an industry response to some of the things you might have seen or heard about with the state fair stage coming down and things like that. So independent peer review, engineer certifications, and the likes, are all part of the risk management process in that regard.
We've in New York City area. New York City has closed down a lot of old buildings that used to be great for filming, like all the old French Connection kind of places, because of asbestos and mold. And you can't go there anymore. So a lot of the old mental institutions and whatnot that have closed buildings that are fantastic sets, you can't go anymore. And so that's the state taking it over. But certainly crew people have always been a little nervous because it smells bad and it's this and there's glass and there's the usual. So that's certainly.
Great. Okay, we're starting to get questions from the floor, so let's open it up. Anyone have any questions?
Hi, thanks. That's a great observation, and the Producers Guild is taking an active lead in trying to get some type of safety awareness. The CCA program is going to be in New York in November. They've done it once a year so far for the past couple of years. It's not mandatory, and it's funded by the Directors Guild of America. The studios have put some money towards those programs, but not individual producers. So this program is a start. The question that I'm going to have is, if we bring something like that to New York, who would pay to go? I have no idea. But I mean, I wouldn't set the price point, but it would have to be something reasonable because we'd want to get everybody to go. That's going to be the first thing that we're going to attempt to do. CCA, again, is an expensive program, and it's funded by the Directors Guild of America and some studios, so it's sort of out of our league a little, but we're all going to try to bring some other programs here. 52 has a great program, and a lot of those guys are qualified to teach, and if all the other locals would start to do their own types of training program, that would be great, but they always look to the DGA and the producers to do those programs. So it's going to be a little bit of, it's a start. This evening tonight is a great start, and the fact that you guys all showed up is phenomenal, because we have 600, 161, DGA, PGA, we have so many people here, and it's a way to get the conversation started. So we'll do what we can, and we'll keep moving forward with programs and seminars like this, and if you want to talk afterwards, any suggestions we can have back and forth would be great.
What we're now seeing in Atlanta is they're now starting to give railroad training to crew members in the area, which is very reactive to the incident that just happened. And I would like to see us become proactive and train people on accidents before they happen.
Smart. Yeah, we should. I agree.
In the absence of that, there are a lot of resources that are available to the independent producer, to the small production company in the absence of a formal program. Doesn't take the place of it, but you can at least find some sources of information. I think I gave you all a handout at the first page from the AMPTP's website, which is domesticproduction.com, which has a wealth of information about specific safety topics for very specific production topics, as well as general considerations best practices codes. It's a good place to start. Again, doesn't take the place of formal training and formal certification, and to create a peer environment where those in the community, in the production community in New York, can get together and discuss these issues and learn a body of knowledge. But there is information that's out there for student producers as well as independents.
There needs to be a protocol, right? So if somebody skins their knee, there's a person, we have a safety officer on every show, and even anybody goes to the first aid kit, we know about it, and we want to know why they went to the first aid kit, and we need to take a report of what it is. And if they skin their knee, and more than 2 people who are trained in first aid go, yeah, they just skinned their knee, everything's good, do the report, back to work. So there's a protocol in place that, somebody bangs their head and they say, I'm okay. There's another protocol where they're taken out of the scene and they're evaluated. So a protocol which actually might conflict with just anybody running to the first aid kit. There should be a designated person perhaps running to the first aid kit and dealing with the triage, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I'd agree. For any kind of incident, which you don't know how minimal it might be, get a report. Fill out a workers' comp report. You may not necessarily have to file it, but get it documented. It never hurts.
We have to remind our crew, especially if they're new to working as a part of the crew, is that the method of reporting is you go directly to the AD or directly to the UPM. You don't even go to the department head, especially if it's urgent. Just go right to that person. I've been designated, you can verify this, at least in the major industry, on set it's me. You have to come to me, and I'm required to deal with the issue. I can't avoid it, say, don't worry about that. No, I have to actually address your concern. I have to stop doing what I'm doing and address it. It's required. And the same with the UPM if they're on set, or even if they're off set or building something in another place where you're not shooting. The UPM would be the person they talk to. Certainly,
the key grip as
anything will
well.
work.
But what we try to impart to crews, and I'll go on sets and say this, is that every member of your crew, if you're the key grip, all your grips need to know, all the gaffer, the electrics need to know, hair and makeup, that the first AD is available to them at all times. If they have any concerns, it's not that they have to go to the department head. They go to the AD. And if you can't reach them, call them on the phone. Everybody's got one.
And assistant directors are not saints either. That doesn't necessarily mean, you have to, it goes back to the individual. You have to make sure that your concern is being addressed.
So what happens when there's no AD on set?
You go to the UPM. Or if it's, or the producer, whoever's the head person, the highest person on set.
We also do lean on the key grips because historically they're very concerned with safety. They're, always.
This might be a live production situation, or maybe a little bit of a little crazy, but every single person who works on our shows has a contact list with my cell phone number on it and my email address, and I'm at the very tippy top of that contact list. And at some point, I get to talk to every single person on the show and say, at any time, if you see anything that is unsafe or a problem, call me, because I would much rather have an opportunity to fix it than find out about it in a reactive situation. So I'm not sure a lot of other EPs do that, but I would encourage any EP to do that, because ultimately, everybody on that show is the EP's employee one way or the other, and responsible. We're responsible for the safety, and if something really bad happens, it's not going to be good. Even if you try to avoid it as the EP, it's going to come back, so you might as well face it head on.
I think that's a very important point to stress, that there are a lot of productions in certain genres of production, like lifestyle shows or makeover shows that are done in the field. You may have a talent, you may have a cameraman, and a producer. It could be very, 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 very thinly crewed. There's always someone who's responsible either in the field or back in the home office. And as an EP or UPM, there's always someone who's responsible and always someone who is reachable.
Yeah, I've found that it's very good when the producer is strong and they'll take authority. A lot of times in commercials, whatnot, there tends to be, I don't know, kind of, the immediate response, and it's nice when the producer will step up and be the producer as the person of authority to make decisions.
It's a very good point, and I can only speak for NBC Universal. One of the things, I'm hired by NBC, I'm not hired by any of my productions. And one of the things that I worked with Dana, it's probably why I'm here, I tell the crew, I'll try to walk around and speak with everybody so that they know there's a hotline with NBC, an 800 number that's entirely anonymous, and it really is. And what I try to impart to them is that they can reach out to me directly, because I understand, and I was there. I started loading trucks at a warehouse. It's a very slippery slope, and it's a very, you want to get hired again. You don't want to piss off your boss, but you want things to be safe, and you don't want to be put into a dangerous situation. That's how we try to handle it in-house. Now, like I said, I make myself available 24/7, but then it begs a bigger question.
In that case, this was a momentary thing. You can't say, well, excuse me, while I go ask the AD if I can do that, or I'm going to go tell the AD on you that you made me do this, because they're saying do that now sometimes, right? In the heat of the moment.
It was, it was a big show, and I was kind of fresh out of film school, and
Yes.
my job. So now I'm going up 4 flights on a scaffolding that was creaky things.
So here's the message.
The whole time the ALM is part of the job. And I'm not even going to get into what production.
Right. But here's the message that hopefully gets to the lowest person on the totem pole, that you can't be pressured into doing anything. I mean, if it doesn't get to you, you have to say, I'm not doing it. I'm not comfortable. I can't. And then let it come to a head. And at that point, you can't do anything until it comes to a head. Yeah. Maybe if the dust clears, you can speak to that person again. And if not, if they're not hearing your side, then you have to go to someone else. But don't do it. Just whatever they say. If you're not comfortable, you just can't do it. Don't do it. Yes.
Yeah, and in the future, I think, if there's anything that you take away from here, it should be, there are some circumstances under which you just say no. And if the person is after you to do it, there's some lines you shouldn't cross.
And there's other situations like that too. Instead of going up, I would not go up. I wouldn't send anybody up. I'd send them out for a phone number to find out who the company is, that they can walk you them. I mean, I'd look for other ways if you were scared. That's what I would do.
And the feeling of intimidation, it's a real feeling. And if you're just starting out in the business, you want to be able to a certain extent, the idea of going along to get along is understandable. But again, there's certain lines you shouldn't cross. And if there are people who are supervising you, who you very quickly get a sense that they're going to regularly intimidate you and exploit you, those aren't the people you want to work for anyway. And no doubt, after a while, they'll have a reputation for doing what they're doing.
Can I say something? I mean, in a situation like that, the crew has to, it's like a mutiny on the bounty is what should come up at that moment. If there's the person who's paying and is the director, and at a student level, you're not being paid, but they're paying for the film, they're paying for everything else, and you're put in a situation, if they can't be reasoned with, then you basically go on strike. We are not doing it. Not just you're not doing it.
And as a student, your education doesn't just include the technical side of things. You're not just there to shoot a film. You're learning best practices. You're learning to be a professional. You're learning what is acceptable, what is not. And again, if you're working on a student project, that's, I think, the perfect opportunity to be able to take a circumstance such as that and learn how to say no, and learn to persuade some of the other colleagues and the other people you're working with to take a stand and take action.
Just think of the power a student crew could have. Take this gentleman's experience with location person saying, we want you to climb up 4 flights of scaffolding. If that person was shut down in a student project by a student crew that says, you're out of your mind, I'm not doing that, maybe he wouldn't have done, or he or she wouldn't have done that. So it really does, I think, in my opinion, have to start at the student level. I mean, you know, safety is safety. It's just like if you were to climb up to the roof of your house and jump off and you were trying to change a light bulb, you wouldn't do that. Why do it for a movie?
So once again, thank you. On behalf of myself, the Rachel Ray Show, and the All Mobile Video Studios, thank you for coming tonight. I want to thank everybody on the panel for adding their things, and thank the Producers Guild for starting the conversation. Thank you.